Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Chuck, and as you can tell, I'm coming to you from the man cave, and it's a Saturday, June 3rd, and it's kind of windy outside, so we're stuck in here again, and I'm not going to talk about my medical condition in this video, because I've been talking a little bit about that. I'm tired of talking about it, quite honestly, and so I thought I want to talk about something else, and yeah, I got a Bigfoot shirt on, but I'm not going to talk about that either right now. I'm not ready to make that video. So today I thought I'd talk about some fire stuff. And as you can tell, I've got a Pierce hat on. And those of you that aren't familiar with Pierce Manufacturing is they're the largest manufacturer of fire trucks in the United States. And they build a good quality unit. They're a bit on the pricey side. They're pretty proud of the stuff they build. They're not the biggest in the world. The biggest in the world is a company called Rosenbauer. And Rosenbauer's number 2 in the U.S., but they're number 1 worldwide because they build a lot of stuff in Europe. A lot of the European fire trucks are built by Rosenbauer. Well, there's kind of some interesting things on the horizon. And down in the Phoenix metro area, a couple of departments down there have electric fire trucks coming. Mesa Fire Department and Gilbert Fire Department both have electric fire trucks, electric engines. And Pierce calls their model the Volterra, and it's I have no idea what the silly things must cost. I'm sure well north of $1 million. But it's going to be interesting to see how well that works in the fire service environment. Gilbert is 100% Pierce on their fleet, and so is Mesa. And so is a number of the departments down there. Phoenix is, they're about 2/3 Pierce, I guess, but they do have some other brands as well. Phoenix has 8 trucks under construction at the factory as we speak, and a while back I did a video about if you're a fire truck fan, it tells you how to go and watch them when they're being built at the Pierce factory. So you can go back and look at that one if you're interested. But anyway, I taught at community college level for many years, and the subjects I taught were fire science and emergency medicine. And I was an EMT instructor and a CPR instructor and all that stuff. But I also taught basic fire science and building construction and some of the other stuff that firefighters need to know. So today I want to just talk about some kind of basic things and kind of how we addressed it, and maybe some of you that haven't really thought that much about the business and really got into that aspect of it might find some of the stuff I'm going to talk about a little bit interesting. It involves me getting to think of something else besides the fact that I got cabin fever from the surgery, and they seem to spend way too much time in the bathroom, and I want to talk about that. So let's go ahead. Well, when somebody has an issue, especially these days, it has an emergency, they're always taught, dial 911. And they dial 911, and a few minutes later, responders show up. And we're talking primarily about fire departments, so I don't want to get off on the police end of it. But we always used to jokingly refer to it as the BRT, and the BRT was the big red truck. And our goal was to try to put the BRT in front of their house in 4 minutes or less. Well, there's a number of aspects in how to go about that. And one of the things, of course, you can't do is you can't dilly-dally. That's why they got red lights and sirens on the trucks. But there's some components to that if you break it down. And when I was teaching fire science, I was used to use the analogy of a soda pop machine. And I was used to say when you go up to a soda pop machine, you put your money in there, and you push the button to get a Diet Coke, well, you call 911. And when the Coke pops out the bottom and you reach down and pick it up, that's when the BRT pulls up in front of your house. Well, in between the time you put the money in and the time the Coke comes out, there's a whole bunch of whirring and popping and clicking goes on behind that panel there. And that's all the work that it took to make sure all that happened. And there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into making sure that BRT is going to show up in 4 minutes or less. So that's where we look at response times. Let me tell you a little story about something that happened years ago. And this was long before we had cell phones and before we had 911. We had a regular phone number that people called. It was 474-2211. And way back in the day, you didn't even have to dial the 474. If you dialed 2211, you got the fire department. So anyway, we got a fire call one night up in the north end of town. And so, we all went blasting up there. And sure enough, this house is going stem to stern through the roof. And everybody there was mad at us when we rolled up. Oh, they were furious. It took you guys 20 minutes to get here. Well, we knew damn well it didn't take us 20 minutes to get here. We could drive the next town in 20 minutes. So, we wondered what the heck happened, but we didn't have time to argue with them at the point. So we handled the fire, and somebody lost their home. It was a total loss. But afterwards, we went back to trying to figure out why that happened. There had to have been a delay somewhere. Well, after we found out that our response time, and this was quite a long run for us, I'll talk a little bit more about our methodology here, but it turned out that our first unit rolled up on the scene 4 minutes and 45 seconds after we were dispatched. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's you're not going to get much better than that. We try to get 4 minutes or less, but we only had one station at the time. It was located south end of town. This is a long run for us. So 4 minutes and 45 seconds was well within the parameters that we were looking for. So when we got to looking at it, and we started checking, well, anyway, make the long story short, it turned out that this was right in the evening and everybody was outside. It was in summertime, the weather was beautiful. And it turned out that the whole damn neighborhood is out there looking at this house burning. And quite frankly, nobody called the fire department. Now, we came out, after all the letters, the editor in the paper, and everybody's complaining and showing up at council meetings complaining and all this kind of stuff like that. Those people didn't believe that, even after we told them and we showed them. We showed them our timelines because we were pretty fussy about that stuff. Nobody had bothered to call the fire department. Well, that kind of stuff doesn't happen this day and age because now everybody and their kids and their dog got a cell phone. And now when they get a little fender bender downtown, they get 30 calls on it. But back in the day, there used to be times when we just, nobody called. And so obviously we can't go there and take care of it if nobody calls. So we're breaking response time down. There's a number of ways to break it down, but the number one way is that when the call is received by the dispatch center. All right, now we used to call them dispatchers. Now they prefer the term telecommunicators because it sounds like they ought to get paid more. But and they have a tough job. They have to sort out what's happening, and they have to make sure that the proper units get dispatched to the proper location. And all the while, most of them are combination police and fire dispatchers. They got cops yelling at them all the time. So anyway, so there's a call processing time. The initial thing happens. The initial thing happens is from the time the phone rings until the dispatcher picks it up. I'm going to call them dispatchers because that's what we called them my whole career. So anyway, so they want to pick the call up on before the third ring. Well, they're understaffed, and sometimes during busy periods when there's things going on. And like I say, most of them are dispatching police officers as well, and the cops might have some kind of hot call going down. And so they don't always pick it up on the first three rings. So, is it possible that a 911 call actually goes to recording? Yeah, sometimes it happens. Dispatchers don't like it to happen. We don't like it to happen, but I'm not going to tell you it doesn't happen sometimes during busy times. If there's an officer out there getting shot at, that's pretty much everybody's primary priority. So anyway, the dispatcher is supposed to pick it up before the third ring. Okay? When they answer the phone 911, what is your emergency? Because they don't want you to chit-chat. They want you to tell them what the hell's going on so they can get help your way. So anyway, so it takes them a little bit, depending on the incident, depending on how coherent the reporting party is, depending on whether the reporting party speaks English in this day and age. And it takes a little bit of time sometimes to drag the information out of them as to what's going on and where it's at. So as soon as that happens, then when everything's working well and there's multiple dispatchers available, then the call gets, the call taker actually stays on the phone with the calling party, and the information gets transferred over to somebody who actually dispatches it. So they can still have the reporting party on the line while they're dispatching the units to get there. All right? When the lights come on in the station and the bell rings, it's not a bell really, it's a tone, but we always used to call it when the bell rings, that's when the fire department actually takes over. So what do we got? We got number one, we got to get out the building. So that's where the whole idea of having your gear laid out and having the doors on the truck open and all this kind of stuff like that, that's where that all comes to play. Now, in our department, we had a policy that you should be on the road within 1 minute. Okay, so what that does is that gives you time to listen to the call, where it's at, figure it out, look it up on the map if you need to, get down to the truck, climb on the truck, start the motor, pull through the door, and get your butt on the road. Now, sometimes it'd be a little bit longer if it was a fire call, because it takes a little bit, another minute or so to put all that gear on. And that's a story all in itself. But anyway, so we want them on the road within a minute. All right, the next thing is travel distance. Travel distance, you don't have a jet-powered fire truck. So for the purposes of planning, we used a sustained response speed in an urban setting of 30 miles an hour. So that's 2 minutes a mile. So if we wanted to be there in 4 minutes, that meant, and we had a minute to get out the door, that meant the other 3 minutes would be taken up in travel distance, which would be about 1.5 miles. Now, a lot of bigger departments, when they're planning stuff out, they plan what they call the 1.5 mile diamond. And what that is it's a diamond with, usually on a street intersection, where a street goes a mile and a half north, 1.5 miles south, 1.5 miles east, 1.5 miles west. And after 3 miles north, there's another fire station. So every place is within that 1.5 mile diamond. If you want to go look at one of those to see where that works out, and I think this video is kind of long because it's kind of a big subject. But if you want to go look at some place where they've got a map online where you can look at that, go online and Google Mesa, Arizona Fire Department and take a look at their station locations. Now, I was raised in Mesa, and when I was raised in Mesa, they just built their 4th station, and it was about in the middle of a cotton field, and everybody wondered what in the hell they need to build a fire station out there for. Well, folks, now they got 22 of them. And several of them run more than one engine. So they're a busy outfit. But they have the best online version of showing the 1.5 mile diamond that I know of to explain where the stations are. So if you're interested, go check that out. It's pretty easy to find. So anyway, getting back to our story. So we were trying to find out, because the way our town is laid out, it's roughly 5 miles east to west by 4 miles north to south, with a chunk taken out of the northwest corner, which gives us roughly 18 square miles. All right, our station, the original part of town, was in the south end, and that's where our station was located, in the south end. And there's a major intersection, which is located just about in the middle of all that. And so what we did for planning purposes is we basically drew a line from the northwest corner to the northeast corner to the southwest corner, and from the southeast corner to the northwest corner. And we divided the town up into 4 zones. And each zone was a big triangle. Flat on the north and south zones are flat on the top, and the east and west zones are flat on the sides. And the majority of our development, when I was still working there, was in the south zone and north zone. The east zone was developing. The west zone had an awful lot of open country in it yet. So when looking at that, we figured out that our existing fire station, while it was not in a good location for the entire town, it was actually in a pretty good location for that south zone. And we could get the vast majority of that south zone within a 4-minute response time of that station. So in looking at that, over the years, some of the politicians wanted to build a new fire station right in the middle of town, and with the idea being that that would take care of everything. But what that did is that put the entire outlying fringes of town outside that 4-minute response district. So the commercial areas, the downtown areas, and that's where a lot of the call volume is, would have been within that 4-minute response time distance, but a lot of it wouldn't be. Well, in plotting all that, I actually took a big map of the town, a 500 square foot per inch, or 500 foot per inch map, and I took what I called the 1.5 mile wire. And this is long before we had computers to do this, and so we did everything by hand. And we actually drew up an entire zone of how far response distances were to every place in town, because we were still running that one fire station. Now jump ahead for a minute and say when I retired from there, we just bought the property for the north station and the east station, but we hadn't built them yet. And so we were still running out of one station. So basically what it turned out to be, and interestingly enough, they're talking now about putting a new fire station in the middle of downtown again. Well, that problem still remains. But what we did when we planned out these 3 fire stations, and with a 4th one on the west side, but the west side hadn't developed yet, so there's not even any streets out there, so you don't even have a place to put the fire station. Gradually, there's development out there now to the point where, yeah, should there be something closer? Yeah, there probably should be. But the collector streets and stuff aren't even in yet, so there's no sense in trying to even put a fire station there. But streets are windy enough, it takes a little bit for the north side engine to get out to some of that west side stuff. So the other thing came to be, of course, the department got busier. And so you had, added to that, you had what they called unit availability. Unit availability just meant what it sounds like. It sounds like somebody available to take a call. Well, we ran 1 engine. Well, when that engine's tied up on a call, no matter what it is, a fire, a heart attack, and we ran a lot of medical, well, then it's not available. So we needed a 2nd unit. So eventually, after I retired, they ended up going 3 stations, 3 engines. The engines were located in the 3 separate stations, both to cover response time into those areas, but also to make sure that there was units available. 2 calls at the same time were very common, even 25 years ago when I retired. It's almost a daily occurrence now. And so they needed not only the extra station for the coverage, but they needed it for the extra unit. So they would have a unit available. Because if you got, and it's happened here, you got 2 units tied up on a couple of medical calls, a heart attack or a fall or something like this, it ties the unit up, and all of a sudden you pop a fire. It's going to take a little bit for somebody to get there, and it still happens. Let me sidebar for a minute. It's our little town. Our TV stations come out of Phoenix, and so we listen to the Phoenix News. And Phoenix Fire Department's a big operation, but the city of Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the country now, and they've totally outgrown their system. And Phoenix Fire has about 60 stations and about 75 engines and 14 ladder companies, but they're coming out a big deal now, saying their average response time has plummeted. Not plummeted good, plummeted bad, gotten worse, just because they are so damn busy and they've gotten so much growth. And so their average response time now, where it used to be 4 minutes, theirs is 9 minutes. Okay, I see this running long, and I know it's going to run long, and I'm getting windy today, but I'm getting on my soapbox. So anyway, the theory behind the 4-minute response time is if somebody goes without oxygen, if somebody's heart stops beating, and they go without oxygen, if it's anything over about 4 minutes, you're not going to get them back. They're going to die. That's just that simple. Now, if you can get somebody there and start the proper medical procedures, and here again it comes to knowing what you're doing and having the right training and having the right equipment and all this kind of stuff like that, then you have a better chance of saving somebody. Because if you get there in 9 minutes, you're not going to save anybody. That's just it. On the fire side of it, a fire doubles in size every minute. So 4 minutes from the time a fire starts, it's going to be 16 times its size. And that's a huge difference between 1 and 16. And that's the difference between saving a house and not saving a house. So the response time business is very, very important. Give you an example. Big city, we'll use Phoenix for an example. It could be any place. But you could have a homeless guy who loses consciousness and falls on the street in front of a high-rise building. And he's going to get better medical service than the high-powered attorney on the 20th floor in that same building just because of the response time. The unit's going to get there, but by the time they get off the truck and go inside, ride the elevator to the 20th floor and locate the patient, that homeless guy has actually gotten better service than that high-powered attorney on the 20th floor. And it's always that simple. And we went to great lengths to try to shave all that response time stuff. One of the things we used to use is we used to say that you can be the best trained firefighters in the world and have the finest equipment, the shiniest truck, and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't go to the right spot, you ain't worth shit. Please excuse the language, you ladies out there. But that was our thing. And so we went to great lengths to go to have proper maps and make sure that our people responded appropriately and went to the right location. that our dispatchers didn't send us to the wrong location, because that happened occasionally as well. I remember one little call one night when the dispatcher sent the police to a fight. And the cops got over there and they said, is the fire department coming? We haven't heard them yet. And the dispatcher says, is there a fire there? And the cop comes back and he says, well, yeah, the house is on fire. And what happened was, and the people were so excited when they called it in, the dispatcher thought they said fight instead of fire. And so they never dispatched us. Well, there was a delay on that one too. So this thing's run like forever. I don't know how many people take the time to watch it. I hope you do. But I hope you've gotten a few little tidbits out of it about the complexity of trying to operate emergency services, and make sure that that the BRT gets there when it's supposed to and goes the right place, and the guys do the right thing. And we didn't run jet-powered fire trucks. We were limited in our speed, and our guys. I've started to talk about this before until this started getting too long, but our guys, I put them under the gun to get good response times, and when the traffic would allow them to do it, they drove pretty fast. And we even bought the traffic control system, which I did a video about here not too long ago, the Opticom system. We did that to try to shave a few seconds off our response times, and you can go back and look at that video if you want to. It's on the playlist. But this one's gone for like forever, so I think I'm going to shut this one down for now. It got my mind off of my current problems and got me thinking about something else. And hopefully you learned a little bit about it, and hopefully you enjoyed it, appreciate it. And so I'll tell you, as I always do, love each other, take care of each other, take care of yourself. It's actually a pretty good life. And once again, like my buddy Kevin said, he said, the cancer's gone. That's all that matters. And so right now I'll just say peace out until the next one.